Coahulla Creek Football Show, presented by Julian Peoples Funeral Homes.
Hello and welcome into the Coahulla Creek Football Show presented by Julian Peoples Funeral Home. I'm your host, Brooks Carter, joined alongside by head coach Drew Carter, coming to you here after a nice lengthy bye week, a much needed one after we got game one of the region play under our belt down at North Cobb Christian. Coach, a very talented team, and the season hasn't gotten off to the start that we've wanted, but I said this on the radio broadcast. Every team we've played as we record this on a Friday afternoon is unbeaten.
Yeah, we're definitely battle tested in that way. We've probably played some of the better teams that we'll play throughout the course of the season. We'll definitely can say that here in a couple of weeks when Rockmart comes to town. We'll probably have played the best teams on our schedule at that point. So we're hoping that the competition level that we've seen in those is going to allow our guys to progress at a quicker rate, and we start to see some success in other ways other than just saying, oh, you're improving in these ways, and we start to see some results.
Yeah, so, looking at the game specifically, we mentioned North Cobb Christian, tough opponent. I think I saw where they're up to 7th or 8th in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's private school poll, which is the poll for single A through triple A. Since they have their own playoff bracket, that's how they've kind of broken the polls down. They're not actually in the same 2A poll as the rest of the teams that we play in our region would be. So very talented group. They've made the playoffs the last several years. I think they were region champions in their region that they were in last year. So we knew it was going to be a tall task. And we talked about that last week. This team was better than I anticipated. I'd heard they were talented, but, potentially a little small up front. They didn't look small to me. They had some really good defensive players and presented a lot of challenges for us.
They definitely did. And I think that their best positions made them a really tough matchup for us too. Like, I thought their best position group was their defensive linemen, especially some of those interior guys, number 0 and number 1. Those are as good a defensive linemen as we'll see all year with their size and strength and how they move, and they can get off blocks really well. They were disruptive for us and made it hard for us to be consistent on the offensive side of the ball.
Looking at some bright spots in the game, which we'll see this in the first break here. Our player of the game this week was a sophomore, Brandon Manus, who continues to progress. He's a kid who, if I'm not mistaken, moved in last year. Am I correct about that? No, that's Landon. That's Landon. I'm sorry. I mentally get Brandon and Landon mixed up with each other. So my mistake on that. But I know Brandon's a sophomore, and he's a part of that talented sophomore class.
Yeah, and he's everything you want, a program type player, and the way that he works and goes about his business is starting to show now. We had the expectation that he would give us some depth this year on the defensive side at corner and on the offensive side at receiver, and then play a valuable part on special teams. And he's done that for the first few weeks, but we had a couple of guys get banged up, and he had to do even more than that last Friday. He did a really nice job at corner. He's tough. Breaks on the ball really well, and he didn't shy away from contact. Had a couple of catches. I think one of them was a 4th down conversion in traffic. So doing some really good stuff for us. And again, he's just progressing like a lot of our young guys are.
One thing that stuck out to me about Brandon is he's a really good tackler in the open field. He made a really good play a couple of weeks ago against Chattooga where he broke down on a short pass play and made a tackle for a loss. Had a similar play against North Cobb Christian. That's not easy to be a good open field tackler, especially at that young of an age, and I've been very impressed with that.
Yeah, and the marks that he checks with that is he's not timid and he's a good athlete. And usually if you combine those two things, you're going to be a pretty good tackler. And then like we mentioned a few minutes ago with him, he just continues to show up and work at practice every day with great purpose in every drill that he does.
Looking at the offense, we started to see as the game progressed against Chattooga a couple of weeks ago, Tyler Douglas see more and more time in the backfield at running back. And we kind of saw that be a primary emphasis from the offense down in Kennesaw against North Cobb Christian. Tyler got several opportunities to carry the football coming out of the backfield, not just from that slot position on a jet sweep. Um, you talked about implementing him more into the offense. It looks like that's something he's getting more and more comfortable with.
Yeah, he's a pretty natural runner. He does a really good job of setting up his blockers. He's got a good feel for everything. He's one of those ones who kind of remind you of Le'Veon Bell almost a few years ago, how he kind of really, really patient, and all of a sudden he squirts out of there full speed. But I think we've said this the last few weeks. We're still trying to find our identity, and with the injury to Andrew Russell and some of the depth that we've had, we haven't been able to get Tyler's involved in multiple ways that we wanted to when we were coming into the season. So we've kind of had to shift gears with him and put him in the backfield more to guarantee touches for him.
Yeah, and I've actually mentioned that too about kind of his running style. It's very slow and methodical, and it almost looks like he's in slow motion for a second. It's pretty impressive to watch when he's able to, bust one off for a 7, 8, 9 yard run. It almost looks like it's only going to go for 2 or 3 yards. Then he kind of pops through and picks up an extra 5 or 6 on top of it. So looking forward to seeing him, turn one of those into a 30 or 40 yard gain and get us in the end zone at some point. And speaking of a 30 plus yard gain, Waylon, we've seen him a couple of times keep it and pick up, 5, 10, 12 yards. He had the longest offensive play of the season, a 32-yard rush down the right sideline where he kept it. And you said this in the preseason, deceptively fast. He just kind of kept chugging along there and wound up picking 32 yards up on that run.
Yeah, that was huge for him going forward. He's a sophomore, so there's a lot of information being thrown at him. And one of the things that I think he's uncertain about right now is the feel for pulling the ball on some of our run game stuff that we all just got so accustomed to seeing Chase Ward make defenders look foolish last year. But he'd been 4 years in the offense where Waylon is, 2 years, first year as a starter, so he's feeling his way through that. So I'm hoping that some of that stuff will help his confidence going forward. Hey, this is what I can do. I mean, because he's not a blazer, but I mean, he's 210, 215-pound quarterback that's really strong and hard to tackle. I mean, that long run, as we see, he made a good read. We actually missed on the second level block. He broke a tackle from a linebacker and then goes for the yardage.
Yeah, he's definitely got some size, and that's not a guy I would want to see barreling towards me in the open field, especially once you get to that second and third level. Sure, a corner or a safety's not going to want to try to come up and tackle him in the open field. So
the guys are going to shy away from that.
Yeah, so that was exciting to see. Coach, looking at where we have been this past week, it's been a bye week. Had Labor Day kind of built into it, so they got a day off. And but what's some of the things that you've done this week? I know in some of my conversations I've had with you throughout the week, it seems like you're not just challenging the team physically, but also mentally after this 0-3 start.
Yeah, it is. It's tough because this group, unlike groups when I first got here in 2019 and then some of the groups before that, they expect to win and our staff expects to win. And like, the sophomores that we have, they were in middle school when I first got here and were coming up and they were successful at that level. So it's not like there's just a losing culture. So it's tough on us right now. So we're trying to make sure that this stuff doesn't break us mentally and break our spirits to, the progress that we've still got to make and seeing those little improvements that are eventually going to show up in the win column.
So what does that look like over the course of a bye week when you kind of start? It gives you a chance to work on some stuff that you wouldn't necessarily have during a game week where you're not. I'm sure you've already been installing a game plan for Sonoraville coming up next Friday, but you don't have to necessarily focus on that with the same type of intensity you would when it is game week.
Yeah, a lot more going back to fundamental stuff and corrections. We had time for a little more film this week, on self-scout type film, looking at our own errors, our own tendencies. And then when you get into the actual physical part of practice, it looks a little more like preseason type camp where we're doing, our tackling circuit, ball security type stuff, more individual drills to clean some of those things up that we're seeing mistakes on, and not as much team reps where we're working scheme specific stuff.
Yeah, and I would imagine that, if you think about, you mentioned some of the stuff you're doing is similar to the preseason. You don't have the benefit in the preseason of having 3 games of varsity tape to look back on. So I feel like, for some of these guys that were, I'll give you an example. Like I overheard before the Chattooga game, I was hanging out with the coaching staff before the pregame meal, and I heard two of our sophomores, River Shode and Branson Lowry, over talking with Coach Holiday, trying to figure some stuff out, and you could tell they were really, mentally stimulated, trying to figure out, making sure that they had a lot of questions.
Mhm.
And this has got to be a week where you can kind of focus on that type of stuff. Where, as you mentioned with Waylon, he's got a lot of information being thrown at him. When you got somebody like a River who's making the calls on defense as the middle linebacker, as also a sophomore, there's a lot of these guys who are having a lot of information thrown at them.
Yeah, so now we've got tape, like you said, that they can look back on, and now they've got something to relate it to, and speed up that learning process, and they're learning off their own mistakes. And those mistakes are slowly getting less and less each game. But that's the hand we're dealt right now. We're having to depend on those young guys. So we've got them, we've got to coach them, we've got to develop them.
All right, so when we come back, we are going to jump into talking about our upcoming opponent against the Sonoraville Phoenix. We'll be back at home in Barnell, Georgia. We do only have 6 seniors this year, and we've got at least 10 guaranteed shows. So we're actually going to skip a few weeks on our senior spotlight, and that's what we're going to do this week. So did want to at least shout out our sponsor for our senior spotlight, which is Lowry's Tree Service. That's going to be brought to you by them the whole season, but since we don't have one this week, wanted to specifically shout them out. And since they won't have a segment to go with that this week. But when we come back, we will talk about the Sonoraville Phoenix and our game coming up against them. This is the Coahulla Creek Football Show, presented by Julian Peoples Funeral Home.
This is your Alpha Insurance Player of the Week.
Whether you're looking for a taste of classic seasonal sweetness or need to satisfy your candy cravings, DQ has something for every fan this season. So hurry into DQ on Cleveland Highway today and see what else is in store for fans all season long.
Introducing BioLite, the world's first IV in a bottle. BioLite is a medical-strength hydration solution physician formulated to help relieve the discomforts of dehydration, like upset stomach and fatigue. If you want powerful hydration relief, try it today.
Junior's Building Materials, the Tri-State's headquarters with building products for builders, contractors, remodeling projects, and do-it-yourselfers. Junior's is the largest dealer stocking Trex Decking, the world's #1 composite decking brand. Trex isn't just boards and balusters, but a new way to live outdoor and virtually maintenance-free. For all your building or remodeling needs, shop Junior's Building Materials.
Junior's Building Materials. We always come through for you.
All right, welcome back into the Coahulla Creek Football Show, presented by Julian Peoples Funeral Home. Now looking ahead to our game coming up on Friday versus the Sonoraville Phoenix. Coach, this is a team that's also, as the time that we're recording it is on a Friday afternoon. They play North Cobb Christian. They're coming off a game against North Cobb Christian, but at the time that we recorded it, they were also winless. So we'll see. They may or may not be by the time you see this on Tuesday. But this is a team that has struggled themselves out of the gate to this point. They also have, I think, a sophomore starting quarterback. Coach Denver Pate's third son, I think, to start for him. That's kind of a unique thing for him, I'm sure, as a coach. But this team is definitely they're young, but they also kind of present some challenges as well. I think Cayman Reynolds is his name, big tight end. He's committed to East Carolina, so they've got some talent on their team.
Yeah, obviously he's the guy they try to get the football to in a lot of different ways. And they line him up in a lot of different places. You'll see him at a traditional tight end and off the ball tight end in the backfield, kind of like our fullback position. They'll flex him out. He's got a pretty broad skill set, and they try.
I didn't even hear it. Oh, I hear it. It's the intercom. I got you.
Perfect. I'll just start over my piece there.
Sure.
Yeah, obviously he's got a really broad skill set. They try to get him the ball in a lot of different ways. They line him up as a traditional tight end, an off the ball tight end, similar to our fullback. They flex him out at receiver, so he can hurt you in a lot of different ways, and they're trying to get him the ball in a lot of different ways. They've got a couple other big, tall receivers that they like to push the ball down the field with. And then I think Coach Pate's son, like you said, he's a good player. He's young, but he's got a really good skill set.
I don't know what's in the water down in Gordon County this year. We saw Gordon Central's tight end in the preseason, the guy they'd flex out to split in, and it kind of moved him all over. Number 8, I can't remember what his name is. He's really talented. And then Calhoun has a tight end that's committed to the University of Texas. So, I mean, you got 3 incredibly talented athletic tight ends all in the same county at their 3 schools down there. That's pretty crazy. I don't know what's in the
interesting dynamic there. That's wild. You don't see that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty unique to have that much talent at tight end and from the 3 high schools in one area. But this is a team historically that we have struggled with, but this is a team that I think is a good opportunity for us to get back on track this week. It's what have you seen from them that you feel like we can do? Implement some of the stuff that you've been trying to do this season. What are some things that you feel like you can do successfully against this team?
We've seen some people run the football really well against them. They're kind of risk takers on the defensive side of the ball with the different fronts that they do and the way that they like to create pressure and try to create negative plays. Can sometimes get them out of sound gap control. So we're hoping that, we can be sound up front and give ourselves those opportunities, because it'd be really nice if we could get our run game going and help our young quarterback out. So that would be a huge deal right there.
One thing I've seen show up on film, I'm sure other teams have seen show up on film that I'm sure y'all have really tried to get corrected, especially since the Chattooga game. But it happened a couple of times against North Cobb Christian, as our front 7 falling for the hard count. Walk me through what that looks like, and what does the corrective action look like for that?
Being able to maintain focus. Those guys are getting a lot of calls and a lot of things communicated, and they're inexperienced guys. So, by the time all that gets communicated to them, the focus of I'm watching the ball or I'm watching the man directly in front of me if I'm a defensive lineman. The focus is broken between point A and point B there. So it's definitely been a point of emphasis. Not that it never was, but as we said earlier, we've got film on our own mistakes to hopefully speed up that correction.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because I know I think it happened 6 times against Chattooga, a little less against North Cobb Christian, maybe not at all this week. Yeah. That's the hope. Well, as I'm sure they've are developing their game plan for us, but as you get deeper into region play, there, as you mentioned, hopefully you start to have the harder part of the schedule behind you. I know that's not the message you're giving to your players, but looking at what's ahead of you on the schedule, there's a chance to start to get stuff right, if that makes sense.
We do, but our focus has got to be ourselves. Otherwise, it doesn't matter, because no matter who you're playing, if you're losing the turnover battle and you've got missed assignments and missed tackles, it doesn't matter. So kind of goes back to the conversation we had to open the show with focusing on ourselves and cleaning up some of those fundamental things or resharpening them. So hopefully that's going to help us here in as we get into the second half of the season.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Friday night is rec night. Am I correct on that?
Rec and middle school night.
Yeah, so that's big to always have the kids out there from our feeder programs in the jerseys, getting a chance to run on the field. So give us a little information about that.
Yeah, so they'll have them organized down. I think it usually takes place about 30 minutes before kickoff. They get them organized and they announce each team as they get to walk out in front of the home stands and go down through there. And it goes all the way from, I think it's 5 or 6 years old, all the way up to our middle school team, announcing each one of those that are in our feeder program. And that's something that we've made a very concerted effort the past few years to make sure that those kids are excited about becoming a member of the Colt football team.
Yeah, and I'm sure most of them were probably present in our youth football camp this summer. So that's exciting for them to be able to come back and see these guys they got to work with, the coaches and the high school players that they got to work with over the summer, and get to run out on the big field on Friday night. Kickoff at 7:30 back at the Creek. You can hear it on the Coahulla Creek Sports Network. And as he mentioned, get there a little early if you're on a youth football team in Colt Country, so you get a chance to run out on the field in your jersey. All right, when we come back, we are going to wrap things up. We will hear from Coach David Elsenrath this week in our Coaches Spotlight. So stick around. That and more coming up. This is the Coahulla Creek Football Show presented by Julian Peoples Funeral Home.
Your roof is the most critical part of your home, especially in the heat of the summer. That's why OC Roofing Systems is offering free roof inspections all summer long. Families in Ellijay have trusted OC Roofing Systems time and time again for our award-winning service and countless 5-star reviews. Protect your roof this summer. Visit ocroofingsystems.com today and schedule your free roof inspection.
Nature never repeats itself, and neither does Mohawk's Techwood hardwood flooring. Techwood is unique and one of a kind. Your floor should be long-lasting and beautiful, like the relationships you create at home. Choose Techwood for a stunning, natural hardwood floor for everyday performance. More moments are made on Mohawk.
Hello, I'm David Elsenrath. I'm the offensive line coach, and I've been at Coahulla Creek since the year 2020. The emotions that drive me is to watch young men learn how to handle emotions and adversities, and watch them develop a clarity of focus beyond anything that's going around them. The band, the people, the music, that all entices you with emotions and some adrenaline, but the idea to be able to control that adrenaline and keep focused to your duty and watch them succeed at that it brings satisfaction to why I keep coming back. It's just, that's what drives me, the satisfaction of the idea of being able to watch young men grow up mentally and physically and be able to fit in those skills to use not only in the football field, but in every aspect of their life, because they've learned to have to work for a goal, commit to a goal, have a purpose for a goal, and overcome it. I talk to a lot of them that struggle in class. The classroom is, let's put it in it's a game. You have to go in and prepare by doing your homework, and then when you get your test, it's game time. And as they understand this and get more mature, then things slow down. And that's the idea. If you hear anybody talk about playing a sport, and I think that's why sports are so good to carry over in life, Like when they first start, they talk about everything so fast. I mean, it's just unbelievably. And then you hear people, the veterans, all of a sudden the game slows down because there's so much more clarity. They've focused and filtered out things that are distractions of what their purpose is. And then they're able to feel and see and get the whole emotion and the whole intent of the situation at hand. So it brings, I mean, it's really a great reward for me. It's selfishly, it's a reward for me, but I feed off of them being able to build their self-confidence and be able to move forward as young men. I guess it's me growing in the situation of the game. You know, I think when I first started, when I was at Auburn, I was all jacked and everything else, and there's so much more to be had. I mean, I make practice miserable for people, okay? But they have to. I want to make the hardest situations happen in practice, and that way the game will hopefully be easier. And on game day is not a day, I mean, there's been occasions where I've got emotional on a game day, but that's generally to try to, only time that's going to happen is if the players are not playing with some kind of emotion. And so I'm trying to trigger an adrenaline release, but most time it's their game. They're ready, it's their game. And, you know, we're with them, win or lose, we're with them. So I've got to be in the background. I like being where I am because I'm observing. I'm observant by body language, by tempo of the defense. I'm trying to gather all that intel in and then try to put it together for our advantage in some form or the other. The Lord's blessed me with a beautiful wife, a godly wife that I owe everything to. I couldn't do this without her. And we were blessed with 4 children, and they're in teenage years, so that's a blessing and trying at the same time. But they've allowed me to miss some things, and they're supportive, and they you know, they want to know what's going on. You know, some of my children are more into sports than the others, and like my daughter, it kills her. She's going to college and she loves to be on the sideline. And my oldest son, I was able to coach him here. My other son, his twin brother, was in the band, so I would always stay and watch the band performance. My youngest one has been involved in a lot of sports and in band, so they've been very supportive. And that's why I went back to high school, the college game, because I was missing them. I was really not around them at all there. And Coach Carter is and Coach Wilson, when I got here, and Coach Carter has just amplified it, that very supportive of family and very supportive of situations that happen that we need to do things with them. Not we need to, we want to be involved with them, and he's very much supportive of that. So I've been blessed to have Coach Carter. He's very, very understanding and family oriented, and that's been a blessing too. You know, we raise chocolate labs. We have chocolate labs that we raise, and we hunt tests. We raise them and take them out and get the hunt test titles on them. So we do that, and we do a lot of traveling, but mainly a lot with family. But we traveled. I've tried to get my children to see a lot of things other children haven't seen. You know, we go to a lot of places and do a lot of things with history.
Welcome back into the Coahulla Creek Football Show. I'm your host, Brooks Carter, joined by head coach Drew Carter. JV back in action this week at home against the Ringgold Tigers. They had a game against Ridgeland during our bye week. And this is a gritty young group. I know you've talked about how they've got some potential. A lot of these freshmen being able to get out on the field and get some reps in. But with the amount of, you know, JV traditionally has consisted a lot of freshmen and sophomores. With most of our sophomores, it seems like, being contributors on varsity. We're a little thin on the JV front.
Yeah, but that doesn't change the way we attack it and approach it. You know, those guys are going out there and getting good reps. They're taking their lumps a little bit right now, but we're seeing a lot of improvement week to week. You know, offensively, they'll be marching the ball down the field and they'll get a hold penalty, or, you know, we'll get a bad snap, something like that. But the execution's gotten better each week. And those guys are getting valuable game reps that we can't simulate in practice.
Yeah, I know you showed me a couple of weeks ago. I believe he wears number 9 on varsity. One of the young freshmen.
Yeah, Jeremiah Crane.
Oh goodness! And you said he's actually getting some varsity playing time on special teams now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because of stuff like that. I mean, he flies around. He's physical.
Yeah, Coach Carter showed me a clip from the JV game against Northwest where he came basically untouched on a blitz and just lit the quarterback up. Yeah, forced fumble. So that's exciting to see that kind of stuff in a JV game.
Yeah, it is. And you're looking for that kind of stuff for those guys to build momentum and kind of reassure the coaching. That way they're trusting what they're being told, because middle school's a little more structured than their rec league program, and then we're going to be more structured than that. So this is the most, individual coaching that they've gotten. So they need that reassurance.
Yeah. So if you don't have anything to do, come out and watch the Colts at home versus Ringgold on Thursday. Then you can turn right around and come watch the varsity team on Friday night taking on the Sonoraville Phoenix. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the Coahulla Creek Football Show. We'll be right back here next Tuesday night with highlights from our game against the Sonoraville Phoenix as we look ahead to our game against the Rockmart Yellow Jackets. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Brooks Carter. That's Coach Drew Carter. We'll see you back here next week.